two years back in software engineering. Since last 2 years, I've been working at Myntra in the search team. And today we'll be talking about adaptive throttling of indexing for improved query responsiveness. So I know that the title is mouthful, but be assured that we'll break it down and we'll talk about it and you'll understand what we're talking about. It's a very simple thing we did. It's not very complicated. And so what we did in one line was we tried to optimize the read and write trade-off. So you have a database, there are some reads on the database and there are some writes on the database. We just tried to optimize that and handle that trade-off a little intelligently. So that's all we did. So now we'll move on to the agenda for today. So that agenda for today is, so first of all, we'll see the background. So we'll see a little background how a search system is set up. Like what are the basic blocks, building blocks in a search system. Then we'll see what is the exact problem statements we are trying to solve. So there are a couple of problem statements interlinked. Yes, there are a couple of problem statements which you are trying to solve. So we'll look at them and try to formalize our problem statement. Then we'll look at the architecture that was proposed to solve that problem. Then we'll look at the test setup we established and we did some testing to figure out the final solution and come up with that solution. We'll look at the results for the same test and then we'll talk about the areas of improvement. So a typical search system is like, suppose you go to Myntra and you type Nike men blue shoes and then Nike men blue shoes products show up or styles show up. So that is a typical search system where a user query. So Nike men blue shoes is the user query, which is the input, and the output is the relevant products or the relevant documents, relevant style, whatever you call them. So that is the input and output for a search system. Now we'll see how it is set up as an architecture. So we'll start from the far right. So if you look at the far right, there are source services. So in a setup like Myntra, in an e-commerce setup, source services could be anything from, say, discount services, catalog services, it could be inventory services. So all these services constitute the source services for us, which are the information, which are the source of the information. They are the source of truth for us. So if discount service says that this and this product has 50% off, then it has 50% off. They are the source of truth for the information. So we have source systems like discount, catalog, inventory. Those guys are constantly pushing updates to a Kafka queue. So they said change the discount for this product from 40% to 50%, from 50% to 60%. So that's an update for us on a document for us. So every style or every product is just a document for us. So we have to update those fields. So those updates are pushed by the source service in the Kafka queues. Now from the Kafka queues, we have an indexing system. Our indexing system consists of a Storm cluster. So this Storm cluster is responsible for consuming the messages from Kafka and making updates to our data stores. So if you look in the center, we have two data stores. We have Solr and Redis. Now Solr, I'm not sure if people are aware about Solr here because it's not that popular, but I am sure people are aware about Elasticsearch. So it's very similar to Elasticsearch. You can think of it like this. So there's a Lucene library in Java. It creates search indexes, and then you can do searching on that. Like you can say men Nike shoes, and documents which have men Nike shoes or which have men Nike or Nike shoes, those will come at top, and then it will rank it. It will get those relevant documents. So that searching is handled by Solr. So Solr is just a implementation or wrapper or a search engine developed over Lucene, just like Elasticsearch is another search engine developed over Lucene. So Solr is our data store, and similarly we have Redis. So Redis is just used as a cache for our products. So whatever products we serve, we use it as a product cache. So these are the two major data stores we have where we are constantly making write updates. Then if you come to the left side, we have the read part. So users come onto the platform, they make queries, they make certain requests, those land upon two services. Suppose the query we were discussing Nike men shoes, that lands on the search service. Now search service will internally call Solr and get the relevant products. It will call Redis, get the product information and then serve it to the user. So the services and users make up the read traffic, And the indexing and the updates and the source services, the right hand side of the picture, that makes the write traffic. So these are the two major sources of information, sources of operations. So source services are responsible for the writes coming to our data stores, and users are responsible for the reads coming to our data stores. So these are the two data stores we have. I can briefly talk about where do we use these two data stores. Solr, as I said, is used for searching. So user query to products is done by Solr. Now product ID to product information. I say product 1, 2, 3, 4. From that to all the information regarding that product, that is handled by Redis. So all the product information is cached in Redis. We have other persistent data stores as well, but these are both the serving data stores. Now, if you look at this system, we can talk about the problems we are trying to solve here. So the first problem is we want to optimize reads and writes to the system. So why do we want to optimize the reads and writes? So what happens is, suppose you are making a lot of writes to Solr. In that case, Solr has to do replication. Solr will have frequent searcher drops. So it refreshes the documents that are available for search periodically. That depends on the frequency of indexing. So whenever you do heavy indexing on Solr, so the read performance degrades. Similarly for Redis, if you do a lot of indexing or updates on Redis, the read performance will degrade, which essentially holds true for any data store if you think about it. If you make a lot of write updates to it, the read performance might suffer. So that is the problem we are trying to solve. What we are saying is reads are more important for us, and we can potentially delay writes to a certain extent. So we'll only make the writes when the read performance is under control. If the read starts going bad, if the read health decreases, then we'll stop the writes or we'll reduce the flow of writes. So here the whole idea is the reads are more important than write to a certain extent. So that is the first problem statement we're trying to solve. The second problem statement is manual indexing windows. So what happens is during sales, we get a lot of updates. We get a lot of discount updates. We get a lot of inventory updates, lot of tagging, coupons. So all these updates comes to us. And at the same time, we have a very high read load because sale is going on. The number of users has increased too much. So at that point in time, we have a high read load and a high write load during sales. So what we used to do before this indexing throttling system was built, we used to create a schedule out of it. So we used to say, okay, discount team, these are the 4 hours you have. You should index all your update once in these 4 hours. And then probably we'll give you another slot. Then we would go to say cataloging team. We'll say you have these 2 hours, do all your bulk updates in these 2 hours. And then probably we'll give you another slot if it's required. So it was a very manual, we created windows out of the day and we used to give it to different teams so that we are not bombarded by bulk requests all at once. So this is what we used to do earlier. Now we are trying to remove this manual scheduling and manual windows and turning different kind of indexing updates on and off. So that is the second problem statement. Then the third problem we are trying to solve is different kind of updates have different SLAs or service level agreements. So say if a discount update comes to me, that should be visible as soon as possible. Because if a product went from 50% to 60% and there is some delay in updating that, it's a business impact. It's a revenue impacting thing. And it's also customer experience impact. But if say a product title changed from Nike men's shoes to Nike men's shoe, I just removed an S from the title. That is, I understand still a customer impact, but it's not that big an impact. Probably I can delay these catalog updates if my read performance is degrading. So this is the third problem we are trying to solve, that different kinds of updates should have different SLAs. If I have no check in place in my indexing pipeline, all updates will happen at the same pace. So I'm trying to optimize for reads by utilizing the greater SLA in some kind of updates. So if I say it bluntly, probably I'm just trying to delay the catalog updates to improve read performance, which is not true, but which is like the essence of what we are trying to do. Whatever updates can handle that delay, we are delaying them to improve our read performance. So this is what we are trying to solve. Now we'll talk about how we tried to solve it. So the idea was that we'll look at our data stores, we'll try to find some metrics and say that this is the read health of my system. So we created a throttling engine, which is polling our data stores periodically, getting metrics. It is saying, okay, the median response times for Solar is this. The number of updates processed by Redis is this. And the network bandwidth utilization by Redis cluster is this. So it gathers all those metrics from data stores. Then it will use some algorithm, it will do some calculation. It will come up with a rate of updates. It will say, okay, so the response time of Solar is say 100 ms, and these are the other parameters. So depending on these parameters, I think Solar should be able to do 1000 updates per second at this point in time. So we took the metrics from the read performance and converted it into a permitted rate of updates. So we said, okay, Solar can do these many updates per second at this point in time, looking at the read traffic, read health. Then we push that permitted rate to a central data store, and our indexing pipeline will read that permitted rate from the cache, and it will enforce it while making the updates. So what we essentially did it, we went to the data store, asked it, how are you doing in terms of the read performance? It gave you some numbers, it gave you response times. You look at those numbers, you said, okay, looking at these, we can do these many updates on the cluster, and the read performance should not degrade much. So we took this number and gave it to the indexing pipeline and said, this is the rate at which you should index. So this is a system we built where we are polling read performance and calculating a limit and giving it to the indexing part. So if you look at the architecture, this is the current architecture which we discussed earlier. So here we just have the indexing pipeline on the left, read on the right, indexing on the right, read on the left. Now what we have added is whatever is we have made bold here. So if you look at the bottom, we have a throttling engine. So this throttling engine will go to the data store and poll metrics. And it will, for Solar, we are taking response times. For Redis, we are taking network utilization and number of commands processed. So the throttling engine will periodically poll the data stores, get that information. Then it will try to come up with a limit for both the data stores independently. It will say, okay, so Solar can do 1000 per second, and Redis, sorry, Solar can do 1000 per second and Redis can do say 500 per second or something like that. So the throttling engine calculated a limit, it pushed it to a central cache. Now our indexing system had a spout. Spout is just the guy who is interfacing with the Kafka queue. So the spout read that value, and it emitted the updates to the indexing system at that rate. So this is the architecture we are proposing. Now to test this architecture, so the major part you see is implementing a rate or enforcing a rate in the indexing system is straightforward. It's a implementation challenge. It's not a logical challenge. So nobody comes up to me and say that how will we only do 1000 updates per second on Solar? That's just an implementation challenge. So that implementation, we just went to Storm Kafka Spout. We look at its implementation, we modified the implementation, and we enforce that rate in Kafka Spout. But the major challenge, if you see, is the implementation of the throttling engine. So getting the read metrics, response times, number of commands processed, or the network bandwidth of a cluster, and converting it into a limit that this is the number of updates it can take without affecting the read performance, it's not a trivial problem. So that is the problem we are trying to solve in this throttling engine block. So to figure out how do we do this, we looked at various options we had. So then we found out this Netflix adaptive concurrency library. So probably I'll take a little detour here, 2 minutes, and I'll talk about adaptive concurrency versus rate limiting. So rate limiting is a very straightforward concept. So you have a service A and you just figure out somehow that it can do 100 requests per second. So you put a rate limiter. It's like putting a bouncer on the gate of a club and you say only 100 people per second you can let in. And any person over that, it will just stop, or it will just drop the request. It will just give an exception. So that is simple rate limiting. What Netflix did with this library is it said instead of entry, we should essentially look at how many people are there in the club at any point in time. So it said we can have a max of say 500 people in the club at any time. And whenever a new person comes in and he wants to enter, we look inside and we say, okay, we have 400 people, so we can let this guy go in. So instead of the entry barrier, we are looking at the number of concurrent requests we can process. And the limit 500, whatever I said, right, that the room can hold 500 people. That is also not fixed. That is adaptive. That is calculated by the library, depending on the response times and stuff. So basically it is saying, I'll calculate a limit that this much concurrency my service can handle. These many processes or requests it can be processing at once. So that is what Netflix tried to solve with this Netflix adaptive concurrency library. So it had two components which were useful for us. So one is it is looking at response times and other parameters and trying to gauge the health or the load on the system. So this is exactly what we needed for our data stores. And the other component is on the basis of that health, on the basis of that load, it comes up with a limit. So that is the second part of the puzzle we needed. But this adaptive concurrency library was made for one service. Like you put it on one service, it will gauge the health of that service and create a limit for the same service. But in this case, we divided these two pieces out. So we are looking at our data stores and calculating and looking at their health and coming up with a load average or load value. And from that load value, we are creating a limit. And that limit, we are giving it to our indexing system to enforce. So we divided these two pieces out in read and write. So now we'll probably talk about the test setup. So what we did was we took one Solr machine to represent our data stores. Then we took a vertical load test utility and created a lot of read traffic. We took a big list of user queries, hit it on our Solr machine. Then at the same time, we also did a lot of heavy indexing or a lot of heavy updates on the Solr machine. This was to replicate the heavy read and write sale days period, which we call HRDs, high revenue days. So during sales, we have a lot of read and write. So that is what we're trying to emulate here. We created a vertical load test for read. Similarly, we created a load test for write on a single Solr machine. And then we compared these four algorithms. 3 of them comes out of Netflix adaptive concurrency library. One of them, the in-house limit algorithm, the third one you see, that is just something we came up with and we developed it in-house. It uses simple mathematical functions. It uses empirical values. So it is a very simple approach to solving this, while the other 3 are a little more sophisticated algorithms. So the other 3 were taken from Netflix adaptive concurrency library, and the in-house one we developed in-house. So in the test setup, we are doing heavy reads, heavy writes, and employing one of these algorithms for every round of testing and seeing how it performed on read and write numbers. Like how much time did it take to index all the data, or how much was the response times, how was the degradation in response performance, read performance. So those are the things we compared these four algorithms on. So now we'll one by one go on each algorithm, understand what they do, how do they calculate the limit, and then we'll see the test results. So this is the read traffic we generated for the system. If you can see, this is close to 25 to 30K RPM we generated on one machine to simulate a read load. So the first algorithm is in-house algorithm. So this was developed as a V1 system to test out the entire concept, if it can work or not. Does it even work? So it just uses simple mathematical functions and some empirically determined limits. So I can give you an example and explain how it works. It's very simple. So say I look at my system and I say at max, if it is giving me 1000 milliseconds response time, if the response time is 1000 millisecond, I can say it is working fine. This is the maximum at level at which I'll say it is working fine. Similarly, at 500 ms, I'll say this is the average response time when the system is working fine. So these two values we empirically we look at historical data and we figured out for our systems that okay, between 500 to 1000, these are the average and maximum response times of a stable system. Then we just took the current response times and mapped it between this range, between average and maximum, and converted it to a load value between 0 and 1. Suppose if you had a 750 millisecond response time right now, we will say, okay, between 500 and 1000, average and max, you are 750. So we are under 0.75 or 75% load. So it's a very simple calculation. You just mapped it linearly between that range. So 750 milliseconds converts to 75% in this algorithm. So then we say, okay, let's do one thing. Let's let us process 75% of the updates and let's block 25% of the updates in any given period of time. So if I take a 1 second window or 10-second window, I'll say in these 10 seconds, whatever are the pending updates, let's only process only 75% of those. And then we tuned the system using some constant parameters and did dry runs on production. So eventually we made it to production, and this helped us, it served us very good during a sale. So we didn't have to do that manual windows. We didn't have to worry that what happens if we get a lot of indexing updates during the peak time. So all those things this guy handled. So this was the V1 cut. This is what we developed in-house, and then we pushed it to production, verified everything works, the concept stands, and then we can do this. And then the only drawback with this guy was, there were two drawbacks with this guy. So the first drawback was it is working on percentages, which is a not very natural way of looking at updates. So it just says, let's stop 75% of the updates, or let's allow 75% of the updates, which doesn't tell us anything about the number of updates, which is actually what affects the systems. So that is one drawback in this approach. And the second drawback was this is highly hand tuned for the current setup. So suppose tomorrow I added 4 new machines into some server, or I increased or decreased the hardware, or I deployed code changes which change the response times, then probably we will have to sit and again hand tune it. So this was hand tuned for the current setup. This was not adaptive. This was not reactive. This was perfectly tuned. So this helped us for one sale, but we set out to look at more sophisticated algorithms, which are more flexible, which are more adaptive. So then we looked at 3 other algorithms from this adaptive concurrency library, which are AIMD, Gradient2, and TCP Vegas. If I give a one-line description of all of them, AIMD is additive increase, multiplicative decrease. Gradient2 just looks at the slope or gradients of 2 windows. We'll talk about it. And TCP Vegas is, the inspiration is took from TCP protocol congestion control. So if I look at AIMD, it's just additive increase, multiplicative decrease. So the name suggests, right? So we'll just say, okay, 1000 millisecond is at my threshold. If the response times of Solr go above 1000 millisecond, then we are under stress. Then you should reduce the writes to the database. So it will just say if the response times are greater than threshold, we'll just reduce the limit by a back-off ratio. We'll say new limit equals to previous limit into back-off ratio. Back-off ratio is anywhere between 0.5 and 1 exclusive. So it could be say 0.9, suppose it's 0.5. In that case, if your limit was 1000 updates per second, as soon as your system went under stress, the updates went from 1000 per second to 500 per second. because we multiplied it by 0.5. So this is how we aggressively reduce the limit as soon as we cross the response time threshold. So this is how it handles reducing the load whenever reducing the limit as soon as we cross the load or threshold. Similarly, if you are under threshold, it will just keep increasing the limit by 1. So if you notice, it is doing a very aggressive reduction in limit, but when the system becomes stable, it is not increasing the limit by that much. So the increase in limit is very gradual, but the decrease is very aggressive. So this is to protect the systems, but this like caused us to face some issues also. Now we'll talk about the other one. So gradient to limit. So how this works is, it takes two time windows, one small time window, one large time window or long time window. Suppose in the small time window, we are looking at 5 samples or 5 previous response time samples. And then long time window, we are looking at 50 response time samples. So it will create an average out of it. So in the last 5 last time samples, what was the response time? In the last 50 samples, what was the response time? And suppose the system is moving from a steady state to a load state. In that case, the small window will diverge from the long window, because the long window will increase very slowly. It will go from, suppose its value is 500, it will go to 510, 520. Whereas the small window will go from 500 to 600, say 700, 800. Because it's a small window, so the increase will be very sudden in the small window, and in the large window it will be very slow. So there will be a divergence as soon as we enter a load state. So this guy looks out for the divergence in the two averages. And as soon as it realizes that there's a divergence and we are entering a load state from a steady state, it will aggressively reduce the limit. So if you look at the function, it is just taking the max of 0.5 and then minimum of 1 and long window response time divided by short window response time. Suppose the long window response time was 500 and the short window response time increased to say 750. In that case, the gradient will come out to be 0.66. So in that case, we'll reduce our limit suddenly from 10,000 to 6,000. So this also very aggressively reduces the limit. And the increase is only by Q size, which is a very small static value, which we give at the initialization. So this is typically 10, 20, something like that. So the increase is also slow here, but not as slow as AIMD. And the decrease, the way it detects load is different than AIMD, but it also reduces the limit very aggressively whenever it detects a load. So this is how gradient 2 works. Then we have a third algorithm, which is the TCP Vegas algorithm, which is, we can just say, derived or ported from TCP congestion avoidance algorithm. So the emphasis on that we can delay a packet or we can delay a message or we can delay an update, but we should not lose it or we should not have it time out. That was the idea in TCP congestion avoidance algorithm. Now here what we do is we create a bottleneck queue. So this queue is created on the basis of two things. So one is the minimum response time we have seen. Suppose we have seen minimum response time in our system as 100 milliseconds. And then we'll see the current response time. And on the basis of these two things and the previous limit we have, we'll try to create a queue, which is essentially a bottleneck queue, that these many messages are pending. Now, depending on this bottleneck queue and some conditions, we increase and decrease the value. But the thing to note here is there are two things to note. One, it is increasing or decreasing the value at every time step. It is not waiting for some threshold or it is not waiting for anything or some load state to occur. It is increasing or decreasing the limit at every time step. So it is very reactive as compared to other 2-3 guys. And the other thing to note here is the increase and decrease is linear. It is not decreasing it by a multiplicative effect. It is decreasing it by subtracting some percentage from the previous limit, and similarly it is also increasing it by the same factors. So the increase and decrease is comparable in this case, but in the other two algorithms the increase was very small as compared to the decrease. They were much more aggressive towards decreasing the limit as compared to increasing the limit. Here there is no difference between the approach to increasing and decreasing. It's reactive and it's increasing and decreasing at a fairly similar rate. Now if you look at the test results, so we had a certain amount of updates which we pushed on the solar machine, and we had a certain static read load on the solar machine. So the in-house algorithm was able to process 100% of the messages in 20 minutes. And the read performance of the database during that time can be seen in the graph below. So if you look at it closely, the response times reached a peak of around 70 milliseconds. This was the in-house algorithm we had as a V1. Now, if we compare it to other guys, if you look at say AIMD, it was only able to process 60% of the tuples in that time period, because it aggressively reduced the limit of couple of times, and then it was taking a long time to recover that limit. So suppose it went from 1000 to say 500, and then 500 to say it went to 250, then it is going to only increase by 1. So it went from 250 to 251, then 252. So the increase is very gradual as compared to the decrease. So AIMD was only able to process 60% of the messages we pushed at it in 21 minutes. And the response times are a little better than in-house one. In-house one saw maximum response time of 70 ms. Here we are seeing a maximum response time of 65 ms at the peak read traffic. Now, if we look at gradient 2, this performed even worse. This was even more aggressive in reducing the limit, and only 40% of the messages were processed in 23 minutes in our test setup. And the response times are also worse than other two. The response times reached 80 ms at their peak. Now, if you look at TCP Vegas, this was able to process 100% of the messages in 16 minutes, and it has slightly better response times than all of the guys, like even from the in-house one, even from AIMD. So this had a peak of 60 milliseconds in the read performance, and write performance, it was able to process all messages in 16 minutes at the same time. So we went with TCP Vegas because it processed all updates in the minimum time, and it had the lowest response times. Now the question arises, why was TCP Vegas able to perform better, and what were the drawbacks in AIMD and gradient 2 which were not suited for our use case? They must be great algorithms for some other use case, but for our use case, TCP Vegas performed better. So AIMD was very less reactive, or it was only updating it properly when a threshold was crossed. It was very binary, 0 or 1. That is the threshold crossed? Yes. So do this. If the threshold crossed, no, then do this. There were only 2 states. But if you look at TCP Vegas, it was updating the value at every timestamp, irrespective of the threshold. So it was very reactive in the way the load was changing. And similarly, if you look at gradient 2 and AIMD, both of them were very aggressive in reducing, but very slow in increasing the limits, while TCP Vegas was doing that linearly for both the cases. So it had a very similar approach to increasing and decreasing. It wasn't biased toward one. Now, if you look at the before and after pictures like you'd see in TV commercials. So before, if you look on the left hand side, you'll see a graph where we have a spiky behavior. So this is how we receive updates, and this is how we were processing them. So at some point in time, you can see we have 0 updates, 10 updates, 100 updates. Then suddenly at some point in time, we have around 400 updates per second. So this was also making our read response time spiky. it was also affecting our read performance. So after deploying this indexing throttling to production, after testing it out, after making it live, if you can see on the right, you'll see a much more controlled and much more smooth curve. So here the flow and the amount of updates we are doing on our data stores is very controlled and stable. So this helped us to get rid of the spiky behavior in our read traffic as well. Read response times. So now we'll just talk about a couple of areas and then we'll open it up for questions, because I'm sure there will be a lot of questions if I didn't do a very good job of explaining. So if you look at areas of improvement, so we talked about how different kinds of updates have different SLAs. So discount updates needs to be done ASAP. Inventory updates need to be done ASAP. But say probably coupons can wait for a while. Catalog surely can wait for a while. So different types of updates have uh, different delay that they can expect handle. So they have different tolerance to delays. So currently what we do is, currently we just gave them a static priority list. And our system looks at that priority list and looks at the number of pending messages and figures out how much messages of each class should I process. So let me put it this way. Suppose our throttling engine said that I can process 1000 messages per second on Solr. That's the amount Solr can take. So I can write 1000 messages per second. Now I said, okay, I have discount updates, I have inventory updates, I have catalog updates, I have coupon updates. How do I divide this 1000 limit between these four guys? So that's where we built a very rudimentary system. We said, look at the number of pending messages in each queue and look at the static priority list we have given you, and then figure out how to divide this 1000 limit between these four kinds of updates. So that's what we do today. But the idea is to make it more intelligent, because not all updates are same. So a discount update might be a very small payload. A catalog update might be a very big payload. Probably all the images, all the text, everything has changed in a product. So not all updates are made similar, or not all of them take same time of processing. So probably we can look into that and do a much more intelligent allocation between different kind of updates. So currently we are not aware about the different kind of updates. We just gave them a priority order. The other thing is, today for gauging the health of Redis cluster, we are looking at network utilization and the number of commands processed in some previous time delta. So we were exploring that as compared to this, probably we should look at our services which are talking to Redis. So suppose a service A talks to Redis, probably we should get the metrics from that service on what is the response time that service is seeing. What is the time that service thinks Redis is taking? So probably we should gather metrics not from the data stores, but from the services which are dependent on those data stores. Because this is essentially what we're trying to solve. So this is a more closer proxy of what we're trying to solve. So the idea was probably we can look into the services which call these data stores and gather metrics from there as compared to the data stores directly. So these are the two areas of improvement we are looking at right now. So apart from that, we have deployed it to production for Myntra, and it has been doing well since last at least one year, and it has seen a lot of sales, and we didn't have to do any manual scheduling for different teams. We didn't have to worry about that. If we get heavy indexing updates, our read will suffer. So all those things this is able to handle. So I think that's it from my side, and I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Arpit, for the talk. So now we'll open up for questions. So there are a couple of questions on Slido also. But first I would want to open up for the participants to ask questions. So they can unmute themselves and then ask the question, please. Okay, so So I think before diving in, so we can maybe take over some questions which you have on Slido.
Sure,
So
sure, Rajiv.
yeah, so there is one question which basically says AIMD algorithm caused issues when it tried to drastically reduce the limit. What were the issues you folks faced and what was the impact of that?
Yeah. So when I say the AMD algorithm drastically reduced the limit, the issue we faced were that the indexing request and the rate of indexing we were doing went down drastically. So I'll say it like this. Suppose there's one spike in read response time. Suppose the response time was 100 milliseconds, it went to 200 suddenly because of some traffic spike or something, and it came back to 100. But our indexing rate never recovered. It was at 1000, it went down to 250 something, and now it is recovering by one at every time step. Every second it is increasing by one only. So essentially, our rate of indexing should have recovered with the rate of response time change, but it never did. It will increase very slowly to reach the level it was at. So essentially, read went from 100 to 200 and then back to 100, and indexing went from 1000 to 250 and never went back to 1000. So that is the issue we faced with AIMD. And the impact was that we were unnecessarily not doing enough indexing. So it was slowing down on indexing. In the test setup also, we were only able to process some 60% of the messages, after which we had to stop the test because it was processing very slowly.
Cool, thanks. So there is one other question which basically says how frequently is the indexing rate refreshed?
So the indexing rate we have kept different for different data stores. So we were majorly concerned about Solr. So Redis we haven't faced any issues as such, but we built this system for one data store, so we applied it to Redis as well. But the major concern was with Solr. So we kept the rate around 5 seconds for Solr. So every 5 seconds the rate updates, because the assumption is that the burst we see in indexing and all those things won't happen very quickly. Like even when say discount pushes a lot of updates to us, that takes a little time to ramp up. Like say we are getting 100 messages per second, then from 100 to 10,000 it will take some time to ramp up. So that time period, 5 seconds is enough for us to protect our systems. So in Solr we use 5 seconds, in Redis we use 10 seconds because we don't have major concerns with Redis performance.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there is another question which basically says how do you write to your data stores batch or single document write?
No. So in Solr we make batch updates. In Redis we do single document updates.
Okay.
I think that's it for the answer.
Cool. So there is one last question which basically says have you tried using an ML model to come up with the throttle rate?
So at this point, we haven't experimented with ML model, but potentially, yes, we should look at it. So we went from a very simple, rudimentary, empirical, mathematical model to some a little sophisticated algorithm like TCP Vegas. But I think until and unless we face some challenges or it is not serving our use case that well, I don't think we'll be exploring ML till then. But yeah, I think if we explore ML, it might give us some improvement over these algorithms for sure.
Cool, thanks. So we are done with the questions on Slido. If there are any questions from the participants on the call, this is the time for you to unmute yourselves and go ahead with the question.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, Darshan. We can hear you.
Yeah. So thanks for the presentation. My question was, when there's a surge in requests and they are rate limited, what happens to those? What happens to those requests? So, like, are they rejected and the client has to retry? How are they handled?
No, I think when we use the current rate limiting libraries, they have a system where they'll have a maximum time. Suppose I said in 1 second, I'll only accept 1,000 requests. But I can say that I can ask the request to wait at my end for maximum 10 seconds, after which I will then time them out. So probably one request will try to enter for 10 seconds. So you can give that configuration that it will wait at your end, else you fail it.
Cool. Any other question?
Is that clear? I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. So I think we are done with the questions. Thanks, Arpit, for the talk. So I think
Thanks,
we'll
Rajiv.
to the next talk.